Merry meet, Annie here. Welcome back to Tarot Together, this time the series on the Magician card. Following on the series of videos I did on the symbols inherent within the design of the Magician card, moving on to the attributes for the Magician card. As a reminder, attributes are the wisdom that we attribute to the card. Those attributes arrive from the intention in the design of the card, the symbols that I've gone over in those videos. What rises from them? The collective teachings regarding the card over time. And as importantly, what they become to mean to each of us as we study the symbols and their relationship to each other within a card, as we collect information on learned sources regarding the attributes, the wisdom of each of the cards. And most importantly, what begins to become the card and its wisdom for us. It will be a collection of all those bits and pieces that we are blessed with, provided by others. And then it will become what the cards teach us as we use them regarding the meaning of the card. Some of the attributes that are assigned to a card may come across more powerfully or less powerfully than others. I think the trick is not to make a snap decision when we're studying a card on this resonates and this does not resonate. We definitely want to spend more time with what does resonate. But I'll use an example when I come to communication and the Magician card of a mistake I made early on of not allowing myself to be with and explore and decide what an attribute mean for me. When it came to communication, I put that aside. It wasn't resonating with me. Coming back to the Tower after all these years of being away, it's amazing how strongly it resonated now. We could say that I needed the learning more now than then. We could also say that I decided too quickly I didn't relate to something I had been reading or studying when I was a young woman and studying the tarot. So the attributes I'm about to mention in this series of videos on the attributes for the Magician card may or may not resonate with you. Mostly, they were inspired by the traditional. As with all of my videos, they come from the notes that I've taken as a student in my own studies of the tarot, from teachers and from books. I do not intend ever to plagiarize. If I find something that's unique or a different perspective or a wording I prefer, even in my own private notes, I credit the author, and I try to do that in these videos. If I have ever done so without properly crediting an author, the inspiration of an author, I would love to stand corrected. This video regarding the Magician and his attribute of consciousness. Consciousness is represented in two different ways on his card. His own consciousness and a sense of a wider awareness. The Fool didn't really have much of a sense of his personal consciousness. He doesn't yet know who he is, and he most definitely does not know or even care about who he is in relation to others or in relation to the world around him. He's surrounded with the yellow sky in his card, the color of consciousness. But in the corner on the Fool's card, the upper right-hand corner, is the white of the spiritual sun. We get a sense that there is a guidance that's happening that the Fool is yet unaware of. He's just not simply aware that it's part of his existence. And that white sun, the spiritual sun, is informing the sky around him, the yellow sky. But the Fool is a bit blasé, not feeling connected to that, not needing to be connected to that. We see that same yellow sun now in the Magician card. Literally, he is enveloped. It is the background that feels like it is around him, not just behind him. The spiritual sun, the white sun, an obvious symbol for a greater, wider consciousness. We might think of it as the divine consciousness, or even a form of ancient wisdom and wider consciousness. It's not visible in this card. What surrounds him is the yellow, the bright yellow of the sky of consciousness. What's different with the magician as opposed to the fool is he's aware of that surrounding. He's aware of himself and himself in relation to what is around him and in relation to others. He's enveloped by that yellow sun. At the personal level, the conscious mind of the magician, knowing what he's connected to, knowing what of him is reflected in that, and what of that is reflected in him. In the sense of the yellow sky surrounding the magician and consciousness, it is what is referred to as objective or self-consciousness. That growing into realizing who we are and who we are in relation to. The magician is not yet coupled in an intellectual or a physical way with anyone else. He still stands alone. Rather dramatically stands alone, wouldn't you say, in the symbolism on this card. But, unlike the fool, he's aware that indeed he's not alone. He knows what he's surrounded by. He has a sense of a higher purpose and will to his daily activities, to the prowess he exhibits in the world. His feet are firmly planted on the ground in this card, very aware of what he's standing on. And that upraised arm that connects that to what is above is an extension of his awareness of what he sees and understands and knows and his role within that. But he's also connected to this wider sense of mystery. It's his expanding awareness. It's like he's in the center of his card with his awareness expanding upwards and downwards. But it's what in the core of him and what he makes of that, which is the sum of who he is as the magician. It's not the end result of something yet. He hasn't achieved a sense of enlightenment. But he's achieved his first steps in a sense of connection, awareness, consciousness, a sense of himself in the wider world. Importantly, when it comes to the magician card, because he is quite the character, it's his awareness of himself before any lessons of humility have entered the picture. You might say that he stands in the midst of the yellow sky of his consciousness and also a greater consciousness, and that perhaps at this point in his journey, it's something he is acknowledging and absorbing and is still deciding what to do with it. He'll make mistakes. There are a lot of lessons on the magician's card regarding human frailty, the way we stumble through life, learning from the mistakes we make. Not yet understanding the wisdom we collect from that. And we're in the process of making that expanded exploration of the world and ourself in it, and we will fumble along the way. So the attributes that I have collected in my list of attributes for the magician card are the following. Choices, decisions, the directions we take in life. Conscious actions, and we will touch on that several times as we go through the attributes for the magician's card. Conscious direction of energy. Determination aligned to that. Discernment. Everything in our lives having a directed activity. The lesson of the magician card is not always a directed activity that's to our better or higher purpose. The discernment part of that, the wisdom within the magician, is learning what does serve him at his highest level and what does not. It's the translation of ideas, the intangible, into physical reality. The power that we give by paying attention to things in our life, the way we give them a sense of importance, what they teach us, why they're present in our life, a sense of purpose in our life. He hasn't gotten there yet, but he's taking the first steps in living in a sense outside of himself, or in addition to himself. And only within that will he arrive at a place of understanding his true purpose. It's about establishing realistic goals. Again, it's himself in relation to everything that's in his life. It is the power of thinking, which is, for many of us, the reason why we enjoy going up to our eyeballs in study of the tarot in depth when it comes to symbolism and history and all the possibilities that each card might be. It's the joy of collecting experiences, collecting wisdom, and basically the power of study and reflection. Always with a purpose, though, which is to further oneself in some way. It is about self-motivation. Remember the number 1. He's alone yet. There's nothing out there that's going to inspire him, and because the white sun isn't visible on the card, some sense of the higher power isn't directly influencing him at this point. He knows it's there. He's surrounded with it. But at this point, everything he does comes from within himself. He's the center of his universe. On a good day, when it's balanced correctly. On a bad day, when that turns into ego and selfishness and actions which aren't to his best will. At the spiritual level, that yellow sun, the conscious mind, is the realization that the more we gain insight into the world around us, the more we're touching on the face of mystery. There's a purpose to this self-realization, which is internal and external, as within, so without. And there's a singleness of purpose. The thing about the Magician card is, he may not yet have figured out what his purpose is. But standing alone, a man or woman standing alone, the Magician has a sense that there's something in addition to the tangible, what can be experienced with the 5 senses in life. He seems frozen in time on this card. We mentioned that in the symbols. But when we think of him and his consciousness, and the decisions he makes from this point, he becomes very powerfully an image of the future. And our connection in every moment and in everything we do to the future. And because of the power of consciousness in the card, knowing that is the case. With each of the cards, I talk about the attributes that are wisdom, that set the example for us. But there's also, in reversals, as I've shared with you I do use, the power of when that wisdom, that same teaching, is reversed, in the sense that it will tell us an action is outside of its correct time. It's inappropriate in relation to what is going on around it. That there's too much of it, or not enough of it. For the Magician card, you think of reversals as, what if the Magician suddenly took that hand pointing to the ground, his firm place of rootedness, and suddenly brought it to his chest. And there he is, connected upwards, has lost his connection to the ground. I wonder if he keeps that finger pointing very securely downwards and brings the hand pointed to the heavens down to his chest, disconnecting himself from that flow of energy which his card represents. As above, so below. Any extremes that are aligned to him in each of his attributes probably means there's a disconnection between reality in the here and now and the inspiration or higher purpose that we can choose to align to in regard to that. Some of the things to consider for the Magician card when it comes to reversals, challenges, and the wisdom that is aligned to that. The feeling of being stuck between above and below, within and without, and not being able to make a decision, not being able to think something through, to use the power of air and discernment in a way to be frozen in time. Sometimes I think when I look at the Magician card, which feels so very frozen in time to me, it's an illustration. I'm stuck between the here and the there. But the power of the Magician card when it comes to this reversed wisdom of discernment and decision making and goal setting, everything that connects this moment to the future, is the Magician knows. He is in every moment deciding. When the reversal comes into play is when he's frozen. He's either forgotten that, or for some reason he's not taking action on that. He might be distracted. There's so much in that below that occupies him, that distracts him. Or it could be he's too fascinated with some sense of greaterness. Greaterness? Okay, that's another name for the whatever is greater. He can be so distracted with the yellow that surrounds him that he's not seeing it is equally visible in the world around him and the living of his life. He's very self-centered at this point. He hasn't had those lessons in humility, his encounters with others along the way, even though he's encountering the Fool. In this card, if we think of it as a progression of the Fool's journey, he's kind of standing there in front of him. It's not like an arms out, welcoming presentation of the Fool. It's like, stand there on the other side of the table, back a distance from me, and I will pontificate. Look at me. So it's not that exchange and intercourse which becomes so important to his wisdom learning and the power of humility as he moves forward. So if he stands there, the Magician doing a bit of showmanship, you could say then his ego is in the way, blocking him from entering into an exchange with a Fool or then anyone he meets along the way. He could be, in the reversals, erratic in his projection of energy, either constantly making much ado about nothing, or, like a Chalice moment, the big something, which he should have made much ado of, goes by him and he does not see it. He can make a mountain out of a molehill, or he could turn a molehill into a mountain. And those things can occur from lack of attention, lack of awareness. If he's too busy thinking of himself, standing firmly in the middle of his world, and distances himself from that world in any moment, his attention will drift. He forgets that he's making those decisions in the moment, to direct himself, to set a goal or a focus or a target, which sounds very dry, but the setting of focus, goal, and target is to say, I'm present to my life and I create the next moment. He's in an act of creation every moment, the Magician. What if he forgets that? That disconnect could be because he doesn't feel that yellow sky around him, a lack of purpose, a lack of feeling that what he does matters. He could get to the point that he is so much in the conscious world, the yellow world of thinking and getting lost up here, that he forgets that he's intended to, we all are intended to do something with that. That what starts out here needs to be words or actions. If he's frozen in time, if the pose we see him holding here isn't just the second before he makes a decision, but he's frozen there, we would ask the card then, in its reversals, to give us an indication, what's the lack of motivation? What's keeping him there? There's a wide world of possibilities when it comes to that. Can it be a comfort level? This stuck in the moment. If he hasn't yet learned the lessons of humility, he's also not yet learned the way we make use of personal power, make the hard decisions, and why we make those decisions. On behalf of who? The reversals for the Magician. They represent all the challenges we face. We move, in a sense, from childhood into first awareness of ourself in relation to others. That world that surrounds the Magician in the card, the world of nature around him, and all of the physical experiences of living, and his connection via the table to who's come before and opportunities that exist. They're all part of the process of becoming, maturing, and gaining one's own life wisdom. The bright yellow of the Magician card, the surrounding of consciousness. It's his connection to that next step in his evolution. That yellow informs everything in his life. Energy is in everything. The divine is in everything. He is energy. He is divine. He's being born in each moment. But a reversal of the card means he's set himself separate from that brilliant yellow sky behind him. He's forgotten, or has not yet learned, that there is purpose to every action in his living. As always, I welcome your comments below and on our Facebook group. Information follows regarding this or any of the attributes that I'm going to post for the Magician card. There's going to be things we don't agree on. There's going to be things you know and you've given thought to that will inspire me and anyone else who reads the comments that you share. That's the reason I do these videos. I do them selfishly. It's a learning experience for me. I've already learned a lot from those of you who have been on the group or have made comments here on YouTube. I guess if I were the Magician, sitting here in front of my video camera making a video, I would know, acknowledge why I do it. Understanding the purpose behind even a mundane action like recording a YouTube video. The series on the Magician and his attributes will continue in the next video. Mary Part.